Warning, the following video is controversial. It contains ideas, political views, and conclusions that will offend 50% of America. Viewer discretion is advised.
Inside this building, located just a few miles away from the White House in Washington, D.C., my research leads me to believe that the Democrats have rigged an ingenious plan to 100% legally steal the election from Donald Trump. Now, this is not an official government building, yet it's likely one of the most heavily guarded structures in our nation's capital. And I believe it's ground zero for an announcement that will lock the 2024 election for one candidate no one is paying attention to right now. And it will cement the Democrats' secret plan to rig the 2024 election in their favor. In 2020, the Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed by the FBI, DOJ, and Big Tech, who all colluded to suppress damaging information about the Bidens ahead of the election. Now, this big steal cost Trump his presidency in 2020. And now, well, it's time again to prepare for the Democrats' plan to rig the 2024 election. Because what the Democrats have planned next will make the fake Russian collusion story and the Hunter Biden laptop suppression story look like child's play. They're already interfering with this election using lawfare in Washington, D.C.
A federal grand jury here in Washington has voted to indict the former president,
the state of New York,
an indictment against former President Donald Trump.
Georgia
has returned an indictment in connection with former President Donald Trump's
the state of Florida,
the indictment of the former president,
and even the state of Colorado.
Former President Donald Trump will be left off the state's primary and presidential ballots.
Breaking news, the federal indictment against Donald Trump
of indictment.
Now that this indictment and the alleged efforts by Trump,
the former president will surrender to authorities at the jail.
Our American president is booked into county jail,
where he's accused of conspiring to undermine the last election.
It's a witch hunt in the truest sense of the word. It's election interference.
Yet just weeks from now, I believe ground zero for the biggest election shock of our lives will come from another place entirely. And that's why I've made this video. I've made it to help you prepare for the enormous impact the 2024 election will have on you, on your rights, and on your portfolio while you still have time to prepare. So if you've been wondering who's going to win the 2024 election, where can I keep my money safe? How can I be prepared ahead of time no matter who wins the White House? How will this election affect the economy for years to come? And what are the exact steps I should take today? Any and all of the questions you have, you're about to get exact answers. Just keep in mind, I don't work for any political party. I don't work for Wall Street or any mainstream media company for that matter. I'm 100% independent, and my firm is funding this presentation. And that means one thing. I'm not taking any money here to fulfill a particular agenda. And because of that, I'm not beholden to anyone. The only agenda here is to simply share unbiased ideas with you and to help you prepare for the 2024 election. These are the same ideas I'm using to protect my own money. And if you're like me, if you're concerned about the fate of this great nation and the value of the savings you've worked hard to build, well then, please listen closely. Because despite the efforts to sue Donald Trump in New York, Georgia, Washington, D.C., and elsewhere, despite blacking out Trump from almost all mainstream media coverage, despite even members of the media making hot mic admissions about doing him harm to keep him from the White House, I believe the real final blow will be a 1-2 punch from the radical left from this secretive Tudor building. In fact, thehill.com says this would be, quote, the best way for Democrats to win in 2024. It has nothing to do with dead people voting. It has nothing to do with manipulating voting machines. It has nothing to do with election workers either. Instead, I'll soon show you a 30-second clip that will shock you, and it will outrage the radical left, because I'm forecasting a transformation of our national character from freedom and independence to complete control by and dependence on the U.S. government. Our country will likely turn against itself. The U.S. could be officially dragged into the world war we see unfolding today, ushering in sweeping debt defaults, another Great Depression, hyperinflation, currency controls, a digital dollar that will give the government control over your money, a total takeover of our healthcare system, which will leave you sick and without the drugs you need, a renegotiation of our seniors' Social Security and Medicare benefits, amnesty to all illegal immigrants and even criminals and terrorists, and many, many other policies you never thought you'd see in America. But there's hope. There are 5 simple steps I want to share with you today that you can follow to reclaim control of your life so that you can get prepared for what's coming and emerge freer and even potentially wealthier than you are today. But fair warning, you need to hear and take these steps right now, because not only do I believe the system is solely focused on keeping Donald Trump from office again, but I also believe they have the power to do it. More than that, they have the ideal candidate waiting in the wings to not only keep Trump from office, but ramrod a plan to control our lives and transform this country permanently. And it will not be Biden, because let's face it, Biden's dementia is out of control. I mean, he couldn't run a lemonade stand, let alone a country. And it's questionable if he's even president right now. He doesn't know where he is, what he's doing. I mean, he can barely put one foot in front of the other. That's why the left is terrified that he is going to lose this election. Democrats who want to stay in power worry about Biden's chances against Trump. Democrats running for office down ballot are worried about his effect on their races. Even former President Obama, who knows both Biden and running for president better than anyone, is worried Joe Biden will lose, which is why the groundwork is being laid for Biden to drop out or get pushed out of this race, making way for a checkmate candidate that will not only beat Trump, but fundamentally change America forever. Now, before I tell you who, you're probably wondering, who am I? That's a good question. Not many people know my name. And that's because I've purposefully stayed in the shadows for over a decade, working closely with some of the biggest names in politics, finance, and economics. I got my start as a congressional staffer for Dr. Ron Paul. I've worked closely with Ronald Reagan's former budget director and one of the architects of the Reagan Revolution. I've been in multiple closed-door meetings with Federal Reserve officials, including with former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan. I was behind the scenes on some of the most prescient political forecasts since the turn of the century, including being at Trump Tower 48 hours before the 2016 election, predicting President Trump would win when everyone thought it was an insane call, and 48 hours before Brexit, when I produced a forecast straight from the London Eye Ferris wheel, breaking down exactly why the UK would leave the Eurozone, when most people thought that was an insane position. I was also behind a prediction viewed over hundreds of thousands of times, predicting that Biden would be president in 2020. I've worked with a reclusive billionaire who sued the federal government to take down the tax system. I've been behind the scenes with the American who got closer than probably anyone else to passing a constitutional amendment to force the federal government to balance the budget through the state legislatures. And I was the right-hand man to the creator of the IOUSA documentary that predicted how the national debt would get out of control just like it is today. I've been on personal emails to President Trump. I've worked closely with former CIA advisor Jim Rickards, with Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki, plus many, many, many others you probably know of that I'm not going to keep listing here. And while I can't share the most private conversations I have with these giants, I can tell you that based on conversations with my network, that something big is coming in this election. Given the panic among the power players within the Democratic Party, the entire left-leaning mainstream media is now beginning to turn against Joe Biden. For example, Politico reports that Democrat strongholds are receiving unprecedented pushback from voters over a border policy that has now created a migrant crisis. It's so severe, it is causing cities like Chicago and New York to cut back or even eliminate core services to their own citizens, sparking anxiety among Democratic officials about the potential fallout heading into the 2024 election cycle. The bottom line is, no one wants more of Joe Biden. Given his age and obvious decline in cognitive ability, given his poll numbers, the state of the U.S. economy, the world at war, the wild card of the Republican impeachment inquiry unearthing more damning evidence against the sitting president, and the shocking 67% of likely Democrat voters who are now saying the party should nominate someone else. You take that all into consideration, and it seems like a safe bet that Biden will be put out to pasture for someone else to step in and take his place. So the obvious question is, who will replace Biden? Unfortunately for the Democrats, their roster is light. I would be shocked if it was Kamala. After all, she's more incompetent than Biden, and she can't use dementia as an excuse. AOC is too young to run, and even though Gavin Newsom has been running a shadow campaign for president, I recently had a conversation with someone I trust on these matters who, over a closed-door dinner with a private chef, relayed a story from Newsom's camp that Newsom had indeed toured the country in a shadow campaign, but that he was disappointed with the support he was getting. My contact told me Newsom believed this election was not his time. Now, look, I can't prove that to you, though I trust the source. I did get that information secondhand, but it seems to be lining up with news reports I'm seeing, like this article from the San Francisco Gate reporting that a new Michigan poll finds voters prefer Trump to Newsom in a hypothetical matchup. And over the last few weeks, you've probably seen less of Newsom in the headlines and on the shadow campaign trail, which is why my bet is on someone else, someone who would clear the way for the control freaks in Washington, D.C., trying to dictate our every thought, word, movement, investment, and liberty. She'll bring sanctimonious moral authority. She'll etch a slew of firsts into the history books. And most dangerously, she'll bring political know-how and infrastructure to the White House on day one, all of which would spell trouble for freedom-loving Americans like you and me who want to control our own lives instead of being controlled. Because I believe the 47th president of the United States will be former First Lady Michelle Obama. The Telegraph admitted that Michelle Obama could be America's next president. Another article highlighted reports saying the former First Lady could replace Joe Biden. The New York Post declared, "Don't be shocked if Michelle Obama sneaks her way into the 2024 race," and that she already may be working on a 2024 White House bid. Even Bill O'Reilly has come out saying Michelle Obama is the only Democrat who could beat Trump. And in a voters' voice poll, Democrats were asked who they would pick if they could wave a magic wand and make someone president for the next 4 years. And guess who the majority of them picked? Not Joe Biden, not Kamala Harris, not Gavin Newsom or Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, but Michelle Obama. Even as early as 2022, one former presidential aide said that Michelle Obama is, quote, the Democrats' 2024 break glass in case of emergency candidate. Now, look, if Biden's incompetence, mental decline, and free fall in the polls is not an emergency, I don't know what is. And to my ears, we just heard the Democrats break the glass because just recently, without a book or anything else to promote, Michelle Obama took to a high-profile podcast with millions of followers for an interview that got political and was picked up across the media, saying she's terrified about what will happen in this election if Donald Trump wins. Take a listen.
What's going to happen in this next election? I am terrified about what could possibly happen.
Now, this is probably why the New York Post published an article saying, quote, Obama's wife is scratching to be our next president. Her husband's helping. Pay attention. Adding that they're already polling Democratic donors. Now, according to a YouGov poll, Michelle Obama is the most popular woman in the world. She only polled lower than Martin Luther King Jr. and Queen Elizabeth II, making her the most popular woman alive. She's had nothing but positive publicity for the past 15 years. She's been on dozens of magazine covers. She's had 2 best-selling books. And as a popular black woman, she'd be excused for leapfrogging Kamala Harris. For all of these reasons, she's the only Democrat that has any chance of beating Trump. She's a Princeton grad and a Harvard-trained lawyer who's married to a 2-term president that's 20 years younger than Biden and who still has global clout. I mean, to this day, the Biden White House taps Barack Obama for guidance, for advice, for making certain decisions. In fact, when the Obamas left the White House, they did not move back to Chicago. They bought an $8 million mansion just a few miles from the White House, staying right in the political mix. And Michelle hasn't kicked back and retired from politics either. Few people know this, but in 2018, she launched her nonprofit focused on registering as many people to vote Democrat as possible, called When We All Vote, which even though they say is nonpartisan, has for 6 years been working with the help of tens of millions of dollars in left-wing big donor money to bring hundreds of thousands of Democratic votes to federal, state, and local elections across the country. So contrary to popular belief, Michelle's been quite involved in politics. And then there's the matter of what Barack Obama himself has said. Take a quick listen.
What if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony. I'd be fine with that.
That's straight from his mouth. So you can think of a President Michelle Obama as really Barack Obama's third term, which brings a whole new meaning to Barack Obama saying that he'd, quote, do whatever it takes to help in 2024. Because the most important thing for Democrats right now is winning this election at any cost. And as The Hill published, their best bet is Michelle Obama. So if Democrats are truly, really that terrified of a second Trump term, and if Michelle Obama is their best shot to win the White House, and if they're committed to doing whatever it takes in 2024, then is Michelle as the 47th president really that far-fetched of a conclusion? No, not at all. And it gets even more fitting because the Democratic National Convention this year will take place in Chicago, Michelle Obama's hometown. Let me help you imagine her from behind the pulpit right here and now. Take a watch.
And let me tell you, Barack and I take that same approach to our jobs as president and my daughters and all our sons and daughters now take for granted that a woman can be president of the United States. So, don't let anyone ever tell you that this country isn't great, that somehow we need to make it great again, because this right now is the greatest country on earth.
Just imagine what 8 more years of Obama's policies will do to America. We could see America transformed into a socialist dystopia, with another Great Depression leading to higher inflation, higher taxes, to your retirement account values slashed by 20 to 30%, violent crime spilling from cities into suburban areas, more lockdowns. We could see America dragged into World War III as our enemies take advantage of the chaos here at home. We could see traditional conservatives demonized, censored, and even thrown in jail for having politically incorrect opinions. But wait, the Democratic primaries have already started, right? And Michelle Obama isn't running right now. So how would she even be the nominee in Chicago come August 19th? How would she become the next president? Well, let me explain. There are several paths to Michelle Obama becoming the Democratic nominee if Biden either drops out or is forced out. And the announcement could come as late as August, where I believe the first real Democratic convention floor fight since 1968 could happen in Chicago. ABC News said it would make for a, quote, once-in-a-lifetime political spectacle. All it would take is a backroom deal between Biden and the Obamas, where Biden's delegates would be released at the convention and could cast their vote for Michelle Obama right there on the convention floor. And at that point, she'd simply need to answer their call to, quote unquote, save democracy, which would keep her image clean. It would let her maintain that she never really wanted to run for president. Yet it would give the left the savior they need in this election. The stage would be set for her landslide and her sweeping policy agenda too. Because while Trump may be able to beat Michelle Obama in a fair fight, there are 2 mega political trends converging that make this election totally different from previous races. Let me explain. Right now, it's estimated that 10 million illegal immigrants have flooded into the U.S. on Biden's watch. Major cities across America are packed with immigrants who need food and shelter, prompting a natural question by the polling company Rasmussen. Could voting by illegal immigrants shift the 2024 election? The answer? 51% of likely U.S. voters believe it is likely that the outcome of the 2024 presidential election will be influenced by illegal immigrants voting. And how could it not? With 10 million people in the country, the equivalent of adding another state of Georgia to the nation's population, do you really believe it won't impact the election at all? This was something that Donald Trump warned about in the 2016 election. And now the mainstream says it's a debunked conspiracy theory, but take a look at this map on your screen. At least 15 states don't require any photo ID to vote. Many others require non-photo ID in order to vote, which, for example, in Arizona, according to Ballotpedia, means a voter must present some form of identification at the polls. that the identification does not necessarily need to include a photo. A voter can either present a photo ID that includes her name, a registered address, or 2 forms of non-photo ID that include the voter's name and registered address. I mean, that's not hard for anyone to do. So ask yourself, if 10 million illegal immigrants entered the country in the last 3 years alone, the equivalent of multiple states' population just suddenly added to the country, and if many states require no ID or flimsy ID proof to vote, will these people vote? And if they do, who do you think they will vote for? Do you think they'll vote for Republicans who want to crack down on illegal immigration and deport them? Or do you think they'll vote for Democrats who are happy to allow them to stay and even to give them citizenship? It's clear illegal immigrants will be a massive tailwind to Michelle Obama in addition to her current popularity. But the story gets worse, because the second mega political trend that makes this election so unique is that Trump currently faces 91 felony counts across 4 prosecutions, each of which are in jurisdictions that are not friendly to him. It is nearly guaranteed he will be convicted of at least 1 crime and maybe multiple crimes. They might even throw him in prison for good measure. And while Trump's base won't care about the conviction, independents will. In a recent Gallup poll, 66% of voters said that they would not cast a vote for a presidential candidate who had been convicted of a crime, which is why the New York Times wrote, quote, "A Trump conviction could cost him enough voters to tip the election." And Newsweek said Trump has a huge independence problem. We all remember how close each of the swing states were in the 2020 election. Trump has no room to lose votes this time. But these two forces together, millions of illegal immigrants voting and a Trump conviction costing him the independent vote, will easily tip the election in Michelle Obama's favor, which will allow her to install a new operating system in America, one that scraps the founding fabric of our country and begins the most dangerous economic and political experiment in history. Those are the real stakes in this election. We are barreling towards the day America's soul dies. You probably remember November 4th, 2008. President Barack Obama announced in his victory speech,
"Change has come to America."
Change has come to America. Now on November 5th, 2024, I believe President Michelle Obama will proclaim that permanent change has come to America. On that day, historians will look back and see the day America's soul died. Ironically, Joe Biden has said we're in a battle for the soul of America. But like so many left-wing talking points, they're doing the exact opposite of their stated goals. The soul of America is individual freedom and responsibility. But after this election, I believe conformity and dependency, all in the name of democracy, will transform our national character. And the implications of that are terrifying. Michelle Obama even admitted that she sees the government as doing everything for us, instead of just simply protecting our basic rights and getting the hell out of our way. Just take a listen.
Sometimes I think people take for granted, the fact that people think that government, does it really even do anything? And I'm like, oh my God, does government do everything for us? And we cannot take this democracy for granted.
This, what you just heard Michelle Obama say, that's the real big lie in America, that government can and should take care of us, take care of our families, take care of our businesses at every level. She believes instead of us controlling our own lives, the government needs to control our lives for our own good. Barack Obama certainly believed this, and you just heard that Michelle Obama believes it too, which is why I believe when they get back into the White House, that Michelle Obama's agenda will push America to the point of no return, where 60% or even 70% of the country will pay no federal income taxes, rely on the government for income even though they don't work, demand that their health care, their food, their housing, their child care, and their education be covered, and believe in their hearts that they're victims. Meanwhile, you, me, and plenty of other Americans like us will pay more in taxes while having to work harder to grow our wealth, all to subsidize people who voted themselves more benefits. It'll be an America where the desire to work hard, think for yourself, be left alone, and live a free life is replaced with just being a cog in the economic machine, where acceptable opinions will be limited to a 3x5 index card, and sacrificing your dreams, your values, and your freedoms for the greater good. It will not end well. Our wealth, our freedom, our prosperity have come from liberty, not from lockdowns. But come election day, I believe we'll see all sorts of government controls we would never thought possible just 2 decades ago. Because the only thing worse for America than one Obama as president are two Obamas as president at the same time, which is why I see a looming and dangerous agenda just over the horizon. And I'm recommending every concerned American take 5 steps right now to prepare. Let's get into step 1. Around the same time that the country is going to be railing from these election results, Americans will reach a financial tipping point too. Right now, as I record this, Americans have over $16 trillion in consumer debt. Fortune magazine writes that consumers have been propping up the U.S. economy when no one else could. Now, the debts are being called and they can't pay their bills. And the Motley Fool said 40% of Americans are currently struggling to cover household expenses. That might be why Bloomberg warned that a recession might happen in time for the 2024 election. When recession does hit, tens of millions of Americans won't be able to afford many of their basics, like transportation, food, housing costs, and childcare, which is why I believe with every day that passes, a reset of debt in America is more and more likely. And you need to prepare for the repercussions now. Resetting debt is a tool of governments going back 4,000 years to the time of Sumer and Babylon. It's what the Bible calls a debt jubilee. And that's where the debt is wiped clean for everyone and we all start over again. Now, when you first hear that, it might sound like a good thing to have your debts wiped out, but there are 2 big problems here. First, your and my debts probably won't be wiped. Instead, it will likely be someone else who's deemed, quote, underprivileged. And second, the hundreds of billions of dollars in debt forgiveness for those people will all have to be paid for, probably by you and me, in the form of higher taxes and higher inflation, which is why InvestorIdeas.com warns a debt jubilee of biblical proportions is coming soon. And here's what you need to know. Even David Graeber, who's a left-wing professor at the London School of Economics, has called for a, quote, biblical-style jubilee to deal with growing consumer debt, too. And one of the biggest critics of the U.S. federal debt, who's been sounding the alarm for decades about America's borrow and spend culture, has said profligate spending and kicking the can down the road leads to debt jubilee. Debt cancellations have become all but a certainty after the COVID-19 crisis. Back then, in 2020, if you remember, mortgage and rent payments were suspended for over a year, and student loan debt payments were paused for 2 years. At that time, in 2020, the Financial Times declared, "Sound the trumpet, debt jubilees have arrived." I agree with them. That was the trumpet sounding. COVID debt pauses were just the beginning. And if Obama gets into office, I'm confident we'll see huge swaths of American debts cleared from the system. You'll see debt jubilees in all areas that the American consumer is struggling with. You could see an auto loan jubilee. You could see a mortgage debt jubilee. You could see a credit card debt jubilee, and on and on. We're already seeing Joe Biden start a student loan jubilee right now, but the Obamas would likely take this to a whole new level. It will be branded as a quote unquote fresh start for Americans. But remember, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Someone's going to end up paying for this, and it will be you, me, and our children. It will be our children's children even. Of course, our elected officials don't see it that way. They claim that the United States will never run out of money, and they'll print as much money as they need to prove it. And inflation will head even higher as a consequence. But luckily, I found one investment strategy that can help you not just preserve your wealth, because it's easily considered the safest investment of all time, but it's poised for big gains in the month ahead because of a new government policy being initiated. And it guarantees income to you too, so you'll get paid while you wait for any potential capital gains. I've put it all in a report called The #1 Debt Jubilee Investment, How to Profit from America's Debt Reset. And I'll send it to you free of charge when I hear from you today. But before I show you how to claim it, I need to show you the real cost of this debt cancellation, our freedoms. Because in return for the government swooping in and canceling debt for millions of Americans, I believe the Obamas and their secret army of government bureaucrats will demand total compliance from Americans in all areas of our lives, especially if there's intense division and unrest in the country after the election. You know, there's an old saying you might have heard, "He who takes the king's coin becomes the king's man." Well, this debt jubilee will be a bald-faced effort to buy off the American electorate. And because so many Americans are in financial dire straits today and need to depend on the government to survive, I believe a majority of the country will welcome the government's debt cancellations in exchange for becoming indentured servants of the state. Which brings me to the next and critical step you need to take action on now, one to protect you from the most dangerous threat to Americans' liberty in our country's entire history. See, in the background, if a debt jubilee is rolled out nationwide, Americans will be panicking about meeting basic needs. just like during the pandemic. And in combination with the fallout of election results and protests and riots breaking out and states rebelling against the federal government, the crisis will be used to roll out a central bank digital currency. You can call them Obama bucks, a new type of money for a new type of America. Now, Donald Trump just made a commitment to block the creation of a digital dollar if he wins the White House. But in order for him to make good on that promise, he needs to get into office. Meanwhile, no one on the left, not Joe Biden, not the Obamas, or any other prominent Democratic Party members, are making that same commitment as Trump. So it stands to reason that's because they plan on using this frightening monetary technology. And their justification is going to be the exact same as the debt jubilees. It's time for a reset of our financial system and our money to give Americans a clean slate, to give the government tools for economic growth and stability, or promote financial transparency and inclusion, and even convenience and efficiency. But Trump recently revealed the dark truth on the campaign trail, explaining that
such a currency would give a federal government, our federal government, the absolute control over your money. They could take your money, you wouldn't even know it was gone.
How would this all work? Well, likely they'll log your cash onto the new centralized money database. Every penny to your name will become ones and zeros on a government computer. It'll be housed on their servers in their offices under their control. It's a perfect weapon too. Just think about it. When the Canadian government wanted to shut down the truckers protesting COVID lockdowns, what did they do? They froze truckers' bank accounts. Even funds that people donated to them got confiscated. And what did the US do to Russia after Russia invaded Ukraine? They froze Russian assets. So it doesn't take a lot of imagination to picture what they'll do to millions of Americans who protest, dissent online, and use civil disobedience in the aftermath of an election they don't believe was fair. They'll freeze ordinary Americans' assets, and they'll demand total compliance to reclaim access to your own money. Of course, our own government doesn't have total access to our money right now unless they start enforcing a digital currency. Then they can control everything. And that's how they'll be able to cut you off at the knees with the press of a button. Even worse, I believe these Obama bucks could be tied to a unique digital ID that we're all required to have and to use at all times. In fact, Forbes says that a national digital ID is a foundation for a central bank digital currency. See, two of the radical left's favorite boogeymen in this election will be disinformation and deep fake technology. And in the aftermath of this election, I believe it will be used as a justification to roll out a digital government ID system in the name of truth and transparency. In fact, someone recently posted a deepfake of Barack Obama online, and Obama endorsed, quote, the need for us to, over time, develop technologies to create watermarks or digital fingerprints so that we know what is true and what is not true. So in this Orwellian world Obama's describing, your digital ID would be attached to everything you do online, in business, in travel, in communication with others, and it would be tied to your Obama bucks, so that the slightest dissent, the wrong purchase that doesn't support the right type of organization, the tiniest rule or regulation unknowingly violated, would result in a fine, in a restriction of your money, or a total freeze on your bank accounts. Already, it was leaked that the Biden administration has started asking, quote, banks to search private transactions for terms like MAGA and Trump. Now, please understand, you don't get a vote on this matter. It is a weapon. They already have it in their hands, and now they're aiming it at you. But there are still ways to opt out of this nightmare, and I've put together a free report called How to Opt Out of Obama Bucks. I've mapped out every single step of this blueprint in an easy-to-follow way. Inside, you'll discover exactly how Obama Bucks work and how it's different from online banking, how these Obama Bucks could track your every move and how it could be used to control you, how the Federal Reserve has already laid the groundwork for Obama Bucks in July of 2023, and the 3 steps you must take to protect yourself. One of those 3 steps is to get your hands on an off-the-grid asset that has had an annualized return of over 71% over the past 10 years. Yes, 71%. That would have turned a $500 investment into an astonishing $213,777. Now look, I want to be clear about this. All investing carries risk. I mean, even sitting in cash carries risk. And this strategy too comes with risk. And as they say, past results don't guarantee future returns. You should never invest any money in anything you cannot afford to lose. That being said, if you want to learn strategies for keeping your money safe from government canceling, and if you want a shot and the potential at generating huge returns, I'd urge you to consider making this a part of your strategy. And in case you're wondering, no, I'm not talking about Bitcoin. Look, the fact is every patriotic American deserves to know this information, even if Biden, the Obamas, and the rest of the Democrats would absolutely hate it if you use it. So if you're ready to stand up against them, then how to opt out of Obama bucks will be your go-to blueprint. But there's more I see around the corner once permanent change comes to America after this election. And I want to show you how to sidestep the danger. I believe one of the first steps when Obama bucks goes live will be a pilot program to provide basic income to America. Think of this like the stimulus checks Americans got during COVID. But instead of 1 or 2 special payments from the government, I'm predicting that it will happen regularly, every month, handing out digital cash directly to citizens. I believe this will be touted early on as a big benefit of Obama bucks, directly and instantly depositing Obama bucks right into Americans' accounts. And it will not only come at a time when consumer debt is crushing the everyday American household, but at the exact moment that artificial intelligence, robotics, and self-driving car technology is starting to kill off millions of jobs. In fact, CNN reports 300 million jobs could be affected by the latest wave of AI. And they were basing that off of something Goldman Sachs said. Look, as more and more Americans lose their jobs, the cries for universal basic income will become impossible for politicians to ignore. And with the Obamas in the White House, it will be a virtual guarantee. Don't believe me? Just take a listen to what Barack Obama said just a few months ago.
We may need to consider bigger changes, and we should start talking about that now. Things like a shorter work week, or a universal basic income, or guaranteed income.
He said shorter work weeks, universal basic income, and even guaranteed income. Where will all the money come from to fund that? Simple. It will have to be borrowed by the federal government, which will tip the U.S. not only back into high inflation rates, just like the COVID stimulus checks were responsible for our current inflation, but it will bring us into fully fledged hyperinflation territory, because the government, who can't pay back all of its debt, will need to simply print the money out of thin air, which will devalue our dollars even more and create economic chaos. But there is an easy way to protect yourself. Gold. Gold is one of the few assets on the planet that has held its value for thousands of years. Compare that to the US dollar, which has been our fiat currency for 50 years and is on the brink of potentially being replaced by a central bank digital currency. Gold is safe, it's untraceable, it holds its value, and it's an essential part of your portfolio for growing wealth, if, and only if, you purchase gold the right way. And that's why I never recommend you simply get your hands on all the gold you possibly can. Instead, you should buy it only in certain amounts, only at certain times, and only from certain places. Get this right, and you will build a safe foundation for your future wealth. Ideally, you pass your gold down to your heirs. Or if the stuff hits the fan, like some of my contacts are predicting, your gold will become one of the most precious storehouses of value, ensuring you're one of the wealthy few as others lose everything and suffer. If, however, you purchase gold the wrong way, you could end up losing a lot of money. For example, one popular gold scam that's plaguing our country could cause you to pay as much as twice as much as you should for your gold. It's very sneaky, and I'm going to show you how to easily avoid it. And that's why I put together a free report called the Gold Wealth Blueprint. Use gold to preserve and build your financial fortress. Once you devour the information in this report on gold, you'll be an expert at 2 things: how to use gold to preserve your wealth, and how to use gold to build wealth. And you're going to love one of the methods I have in there. Specifically, you're going to discover exactly how to buy gold, the popular ways of buying gold that you need to avoid like the plague unless you want to get ripped off, how to store your gold, and if you get this wrong, you might kiss your gold goodbye to government agents or a thief. Plus, you'll discover important information about other precious metals. Some you should get, and some you should avoid. Look, gold has always been a store of wealth, but with Obama bucks upon us, and for the first time in human history, my prediction is that our currency is going to be replaced by 100% digital currency stored on the government's hard drives. I also predict gold's price could shoot up at least 400% from the point it's at right now. Again, this is my prediction. It's not a guarantee, so please don't confuse the two. But given how much I believe gold could soar, once you own some physical gold in the way I'll show you, I'm also including another special report for my #1 way to trade gold's price action for big gains. So think about your physical gold as your protection, but this speculation will be a way to go for big, fast gains from gold. If you put this off, if you think, I'll get around to it, then you will be left in the dust, scrambling to get gold just as everyone else does. And then you'll be paying through the nose just like everyone else is. So don't be like everyone else. Build your stockpile ahead of time before it's too late. Then, if you like my #1 gold trade idea, you can use that to place a bet to make bigger gains. But once you've protected your wealth and then positioned yourself to potentially grow your wealth, there's still one big threat I see coming that you need to prepare for. As you probably know, the left wing is dominated by tax the rich policies. The news outlet The Nation recently called for the government to tax people with money even more. And as part of the permanent transformation of America, I believe the tide will finally turn against citizens who have assets. In fact, as soon as Obama takes office, we may see tax hikes that rival the highest tax rates of our lifetime. Taxes running north of 80% or maybe even more. And before you think that won't happen here in America, I want you to think again. Because although people don't know this, according to taxpolicycenter.org, the US actually had marginal tax rates as high as 94% in 1944 and 1945. So imagine that for a second. You work your fingers to the proverbial bone, all for an honest salary of $50,000 or $100,000, only to see $94,000 or more of your hard-earned money ripped from your hands and handed to lazy, entitled snowflake millennials who all want participation trophies for life. I mean, that's a scary thought, isn't it? Especially with CNBC reporting on the cost of living being so high that even Americans earning over $100,000 are living paycheck to paycheck. And it won't just be a tax on income or capital gains either, but I believe it's likely we'll see a wealth tax in the near future. That's a tax on money you have already earned and already paid income taxes on. This proposal is gaining traction in states like California. It doesn't matter if you're middle class or wealthy. The bottom line is your existing taxes are going to go up under a Michelle Obama administration. And brand new taxes like a wealth tax will be levied, leaving you with less and less of the money you've worked hard for. Luckily, I found a 100% legal and tax-free investment that's a great shelter for your money, and it will generate income for you while also giving you the ability to keep that wealth off the grid. I've put it in another special report called the Tax-Free Stealth Investment, and it includes all the details about what this investment is, how it works, where you can buy it, and how to keep it off the grid if you so choose. But there's another crisis brewing in this country you need to know about, one that will come to a head soon after this election, and the warning signs are flashing right now. I can't believe I'm even saying this, but a study by the University of Notre Dame showed that half of Republicans and over 1/3 of Democrats believe our country is on the brink of civil war. Politico has warned that the threat of civil breakdown is real. Now, I personally renounce all violence, and I don't believe anyone should resort to political violence, but I'm a student of history. So let's think about what happened on January 6th, 2020, and the left's reaction to it. Many Americans were furious about the outcome of the election, so they protested at the Capitol, and things got totally out of hand. Now, I don't believe that amounted to an insurrection, but we all know that's the label the radical left pounced on. And in so doing, they painted half of the country with a dark brush as being insurrectionist enemies of American democracy. People's lives were ruined. 769 people have been tried and sentenced, and 467 people were sent to prison. And in one case, a conservative who posted a meme back in 2016 on Twitter got 7 months in prison for quote unquote election interference. So if Donald Trump is kept from the White House this time, especially with an opponent as polarizing to conservative Americans as Michelle Obama, just ask yourself, do you think the reaction post-election will be the same or even worse than January 6th? And how will the left reframe the electorate's anger this time? I mean, the bar was set in 2020 at insurrection. So this time, I believe they'll recklessly up the stakes to civil war. They'll claim it's 1860 all over again, and conservative Americans are akin to Confederates. And you see the groundwork already being laid. There's a major Hollywood movie studio launching a movie called Civil War. It's launching right around the time of the general election, which suggests the US will break up into loyalist states and smaller separatist countries. Meanwhile, The Telegraph has been warning never-Trumpers are gearing up for a second civil war, adding that 7 years of Trump-fueled panic attacks have fed into dangerous liberal delusions about the state of the union. But as TheHill.com published, a second American Civil War wouldn't look like a movie. And that's because unlike Hollywood's warped imagination, it likely won't be a hot war with shooting and fighting. But instead it will be extreme political division and discord among the states, making our everyday lives chaotic, distrustful, and tense. We already see the early signs of this in Texas, where the National Guard is ignoring orders from the federal government in order to secure the border on their own because Joe Biden won't. 25 Republican states have already sent troops to Texas. And The Spectator even warned America is seeing a tiny civil war in Texas. And the Daily Beast said it's 1860 all over again. Texas's border stunt is based on the same legal theory Confederate states used to secede. So my opinion is simple. This is not going to end well. We're going to see extreme behavior in 2024 and beyond. And yes, sadly, violence. I'm sure you've seen how our nation is already facing record levels of violence and theft under Biden. It's expanded beyond the cities into normally quiet suburbs and rural areas. And I predict that as our government takes the final plunge into weaponizing itself against the American people, violence is going to erupt from coast to coast. The scary truth is, if you think you and your home are safe from violent criminals, you're at risk of becoming a tragic story on tomorrow's news. And that's why I prepared a free gift for you called the Civil War Shelter. This primer shows you the basic steps you can take to protect your home, your family, and your property as America descends into a cold civil war and chaos ensues. I mean, just think about it. The US had 647 mass shootings in 2022. 44,000 Americans were shot to death. That's way, way up from years past. I've seen this up close in person. Where I live, I've literally seen troops being put on the street because riots broke out after police unjustly killed a local black man. But as shocking as that was, my eyes were really opened recently. 5 miles from where I live, there was an active shooter on the loose. He shot a cop and the police couldn't find the suspect. I texted my wife as fast as I could to make sure she stayed indoors. I was sick to my stomach at the thought of her and my poor 1-year-old daughter playing on our front lawn. And I was worried for my oldest daughter who was at school. Heck, I was worried about walking from my office to my own car. And that was the moment that I realized I needed to start taking control of our personal safety. And I know it's not just where I live. The world is getting crazier and more dangerous by the day, just about everywhere. And it's going to reach a fever pitch by Election Day. That's why I contacted several of the self-defense and preparation experts I know. One man is a weapons expert and operates a massive defense training ranch in Alabama that regularly charges $5,000 or more to individuals to develop a defense plan for their homes. On his training ranch, he employs some of America's top firearm instructors to teach his students the tools and techniques needed to defend themselves, their family, and their property from intruders who want to take their property or their lives. Another man is a former military intelligence NCO and contract intelligence analyst. He spent 3 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, and today he runs his own private intelligence firm. Recently, I spent time with both of them to get their analysis and advice on the situation, and their guidance and my own research resulted in the Civil War Shelter Report. You're going to learn inside the #1 place you can go in case you have a home break-in, what gun never to buy for home defense, and why tons of people are making this critical mistake. You'll learn how you're inviting trouble into your home. There's one common sign, for example, you do not want to put outside your house. If you do this, you're inviting an intruder in. You'll learn the #1 sound that will instantly repel an intruder, and no, it's not a barking dog. You'll learn how to audit your entire local area to know what threats you're surrounded by, your allies, and what resources and safe zones you have access to in a crisis. And you'll learn strategies to stay off the radar and be harder to label as a traditional American, and much, much more. Putting these to work now will keep you safe and get you prepared for society's fracturing in the weeks leading up to the election. With that said, I hope you understand that your action today puts you in a very privileged position with responsibility you can't take lightly. You know, my hope, and I'm sure it's true with you too, is that you're going to use this information to safeguard yourself and your loved ones and your fellow patriotic Americans who are still awake to what's happening. I know you understand what I mean. I predict the new America we'll see after this election will make the 2020 lockdowns look like a paradise by comparison. Come January of next year, I believe America is going to be divided into those in control and those being controlled. But I'm not a doom and gloomer. I believe there are solutions to the problems our country faces. I just don't think our politicians are likely to choose those hard fixes. In fact, I bank on them making the problems far worse. And that's why I publish reports just like the ones I've prepared for you here today. In fact, I publish research like this every single month in my flagship service called The Control Report. Each month's Control Report will share my research on the most interesting and timely ideas and leads I am sent. The goal is to send you an opportunity every month for you to use to research your own investments or other opportunities you might want to take advantage of. Now listen, I'm no expert. I know a lot of experts, and I'm personally trying to figure out how the world works, how I can protect my money and my family and my business, and how I can capitalize on what I see coming. I have many of the same concerns and questions you do about the strains and volatility in DC, Wall Street, and in my local area. So I'll be working with my network to figure out what the heck is going on and how we can all get more control in light of it, especially as the election looms. And talking to my contacts, researching deeper, thinking hard about all of it, writing it all into these control reports each month helps me clarify my thoughts and actions. Just like this presentation today, I promise to always follow the research I do to its logical conclusion. And then I'm going to share them with you to help arm you with ideas and strategies for reclaiming control of your finances, your freedom, and your future. I am on a mission to help everyday Americans like you cut through the deception you're being fed by political figures and economists and to avoid the collapse that I see coming. For years, I've been doing this. I've been helping Americans prepare for the most devastating blows to their retirement and freedom. Before I started publishing the Control Report, I was part of teams that predicted that Brexit would happen, that Trump would win in 2016, that Russia would invade Ukraine. And now I see something else. You can feel the chaos building up. Catastrophes in America are going to start happening faster and more often, and they'll be more devastating than before for your privacy, your freedom, and your money. And I believe it will come to a head in this election. So now is the crucial time to do something because the doors aren't shut on us yet. We can still safeguard ourselves and our loved ones. As a patriotic American, I'm sure you've already taken many crucial steps. However, are you ready for a potential government takeover of bank accounts? Are you ready for which sectors of the economy could be about to tank and which could create unimaginable wealth? Are you going to be part of that or are you going to be left behind? This is exactly what I cover in the Control Report. Members receive confidential information that I have special access to. And right now, I'd like to invite you to join me. Because you've made it this far in my message, I know you're not average. You're not asleep to the dangers we face. You're a true patriot, probably one of the few remaining. And because the danger is right around the corner, I want to give you the information you need to invest in the right ideas, find the right stocks, most importantly, keep your money safe as America's soul dies and as we drift into a socialist dystopia. You'll get the vital information that the mainstream media suppresses here. And you'll have an inside advantage to secure your retirement and your family's future. In short, you're going to be prepared. You will be safe. You will be one of the few winners. Although I should warn you, many of my predictions and insights are controversial. You see, because of the privacy we maintain, I'm able to communicate without any censors. The control freaks in government would probably love nothing better than to cancel me. But because the Control Report is off the grid, they can't. With that said, I'm sure you can handle the unvarnished truth. So I invite you to take this opportunity to join me. There's a yearly investment that I think you'll find more than fair. It covers the cost of my firm's research. Normally it's $995 a year, which comes out to a little less than the price of one of those fancy coffees each day. But to get alerted before the next crash and move your assets into ideas that could rocket up, that's a bargain of a lifetime. But today, here, now, you won't even need to pay $995. You deserve every advantage you can have against the weaponization of the US government. And that's why on this page, I'm slashing the price of your investment today. Right now, you can secure your membership and get a 3-month trial of the Control Report. So that's the next 3 Control Report issues, jam-packed with my updates for just $99. That's for the entire next quarter. That's about $1 a day. You can probably find more than that under your couch cushions. And in exchange, you get my private insider intelligence, warnings of the most dangerous threats to your privacy, freedom, and money. You get regular updates on how to sidestep the worst of what's coming and the best opportunities to grow wealthier simultaneously. Plus, your membership will be locked in at this special low quarterly automatic renewal rate. And look, if that still sounds too pricey for you, I get it. After all, you and me just met, so when you click below, you'll find an even cheaper way to get started today. And there's more. As a new member, you'll receive all the reports you just learned about, like the Civil War Shelter report that will show you how to navigate the chaos after the election, the #1 debt jubilee investment, which will show you how to profit from America's coming debt reset, how to opt out of Obama bucks, which will show you the ways to get your wealth off the grid, the Gold Wealth Blueprint to show you how to buy gold correctly, and a 4x gold secret to position yourself for the gold price soaring over the coming months, and the tax-free stealth investment report, which will show you a 100% legal way to shelter your money and to generate income. You'll receive all 5 reports with your membership to the Control Report, all for one low fee. Plus, even if you decide to cancel, you can keep every single one of these reports as our gift to you. And here's how it all works. Below this video, you'll see a link that says subscribe now. It's your only opportunity to apply for membership to the Control Group. And I have some extra bonuses on the next page that I haven't even told you about yet. So click that link, fill out the secure order form, and hit submit. And as soon as you're in, we'll send you all the reports. You'll get them literally within minutes, no matter what day or what time it is right now. After that, you'll begin receiving your regular Control Report newsletters. It's that simple. So at this point, you might be asking yourself, this sounds great, but what if you're wrong, Peter? And that's a fair question. Here's my answer. Say I'm wrong, and it's not Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom, or say there's no replacement for Biden at all, and he's the Democratic nominee, like most Americans expect right now. Well, do you really think the radical left will give Donald Trump a fair shot at the White House? After all the impeachments, after all the criminal and civil lawsuits, after trying to remove him from ballots, after all of the character assassinations, after talk of even doing him real harm? The answer is no. They're going to do everything humanly possible to keep him from the White House. And in that way, it doesn't really matter who leads the radical left to 4 more years in the White House. The best case scenario I see is 4 more years of Biden. And that's plenty grim, because with Biden, we don't even know who's calling the shots. And the worst case, the case I see increasing evidence for each day, is that Michelle Obama will take the helm. But really, no matter who the left rams down our throats, we all know the end game is the same. So the real question you need to be asking is, what if I'm right? What does it mean for your freedoms, your money, your family, your country, if Michelle Obama is our next president and permanent change comes to America? The bad news here is the nature of this warning means there won't be much time. Biden could be replaced at the very last second, when we're very close to election day already. So what's the cost of not taking action today if I'm right? What does it mean if the cage slams shut on you and your money and it's too late to do anything about it? This is as clear a warning as you're going to get. I mean, to drive this point home, let's just imagine one final scenario. Instead of an American who's headed into election season, imagine you're a passenger on the Titanic. The iceberg has just been hit, but you don't think it's that big of a deal. A ship the size of the Titanic, it would never sink, right? I come along and tell you we're going down. But instead of putting on a life vest, you wait. You ignore my warnings. Meanwhile, the water begins to rise in the lower decks. But you sit on the top deck. You're drinking champagne and you're listening to the band play. Meanwhile, the water rises to the mid decks. But still, the water will never reach you, you think to yourself, right? You're sitting in first class. You're looking down. But as you look down, the first drops of water are starting to penetrate your shoes and starting to reach your big toes. That water is ice cold. And that's when panic begins to set in. The life vests, they're already gone. The lifeboats, they're already filled, because you are too late to act now. Well, America is not sunk yet as an economy, but the time to put on your life vest by following the steps I've laid out for you, it's right now. So let me ask you, are you okay with simply rolling over and letting the government point their weapons at you? Do you want to welcome this new America with open arms? Are you ready to have your control, your privacy, your freedom ripped from you? If you are, then the future is very simple. Just do nothing with what I've told you here today. If, however, you are ready to stand up and say no, well then it's time. On this page, there's a subscribe now button that just appeared. I want you to press that button and it will take you to a secure page where you can join our membership. You'll get all 5 reports within minutes. Your satisfaction is guaranteed with your full 30-day money-back refund policy, and this might be your only chance to join. So please press the button now. Press subscribe, and I'll see you on the